then now we go to our panel discussion with the three experts from the field. And when I introduce them, you can just come to the stage. We have Bilqis Jubari. She is the founder and chairperson of Family Counseling and Development Foundation in Sana'a, Yemen, which was established in 2011. And Bilqis has trained staff from international NGOs in providing psychological aid. Welcome. Peter Ventevogel. He's the senior mental health expert with UNHCR, the Refugee Agency of the United Nations. From 2008 to 2013, he was the editor-in-chief of Intervention Journal for Mental Health and Psychosocial Support in conflict-affected areas. And before that, you also worked for an NGO, HealthNet TPO, in countries like Afghanistan and Burundi. And then last, but definitely not least, Maria Palha. She's a clinical psychologist from Portugal, specialized in art therapy and theater of the oppressed and social entrepreneurship. Since 2006, she works as Doctors Without Borders to design and implement mental health programs in different humanitarian crisis contexts. And in 2016, she published her first book, Emotional First Aid Box. So welcome, everyone. As I said, all three of you provide sociological aid, but in areas of crisis, but in very different, working with different methods, working different contexts. So to start with you, Peter. You have been providing sociological aid for a long time in armed conflict. Can you tell us how this really practically works? What are we talking about? Are these psychologists in rooms where you go to?
No. Well, it's part of it, but I do not provide direct support now because I'm in Geneva in our head office. Yeah. But I used to work in Afghanistan, in Burundi, and I went often on missions. I think the question is very important because psychological support is not only a matter of being done between four walls in a room. It can be done like that, but it's only one part. I think it's also important that psychological support is provided within communities and within families. And I now work mainly with refugees, and the problem with refugees is not only the traumatic experiences of the past, but also the problems in life here and now, the struggle, the discrimination, and the lack of future. And you don't change that by only talking between two people, how important that may be. Yeah. So it's also important to heal communities and to heal families and to what I so often see in refugee settings, that people become isolated and people don't talk with each other, don't trust each other. And that is also psychosocial support to help people reconnect with each other.
And what is a method that really worked well for you? Like when you worked in a camp, for example?
I'm a doctor. I'm a psychiatrist, so I have a medical view. Yeah. So what I did, for example, in Afghanistan when I was still working was there was no psychiatrist in the whole country. No, that's not true. In the whole province where I worked, and so I trained doctors and nurses to understand better what mental health problems are. I think so. That's one method. Train all medical people to be able to identify and treat mental problems. The other thing is that. I worked a lot with communities, so with community leaders, with religious leaders, to talk about the issues and to open up the discussion. Yeah. And
because we will later discuss this, but also because of the stigma.
Yes. So my work has changed a lot. I worked in the Netherlands in a hospital, but what I do now and what I think needs to be done in conflict setting is completely different. It is much more with what we say with different layers of support. From community support up to specialized support.
Yes, clear. Thank you. Bilqis, before you tell us more about the Family Counseling and Development Foundation, you want us to show us a clip, actually, of what it looks like and what you do. So let's see it.
استشارات نفسية واجتماعية معكم. تفضلوا.
Yes, so because when I saw the clip before, of course, and I thought I don't think in the Netherlands there's a center that provides so many different treatments all together. So how does this work? Like, how many people work at your foundation? How many people visit daily? You know, like, because it seems huge.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's one thing about. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me in this important event to participate, and I think it's very important to attend this kind of work. Okay, family counseling at the Development Foundation. What is unique for us? It's a comprehensive work that covers everything.
Yeah.
We established this foundation in the January 2011, and it serves it is providing psychosocial services for anyone who seek help. We are a big team that are working there. The whole employee are 123 employee, but we have very qualified psychotherapists and psychiatrists. We have 13 psychiatrists and 49 psychotherapists.
To get an idea, is this the only center in Yemen, or do you have like 4 of them?
We are serving a community through 2 centers. The headquarters is in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, and the other one is a branch. We have a branch in Aden Governorate.
Yeah.
And what makes us unique, maybe, it's that we provide psychological services for free. We are the only NGOs in whole Yemen that give this kind of service for free. Also, we are the only source of database for mental health because of the absence of government records. We do training for psychology graduate to be a counselor. We do also research in this.
Okay.
And maybe for I'm the founder for this organization. I'm also a therapist, and also I am a professor at Sana'a University. So I have, for 3 years and a half, I was part of the team working. I was a psychotherapist in the clinic. I was also a counselor with the helpline team, and I was the only donor for this foundation for
been very busy.
For 3 year and a half. I have strong belief that one day someone will help and support us, and that one was Netherlands Embassy in Yemen, which I highly appreciate what they are doing for us.
Yes.
They have been supporting us for since 2014. And I say on behalf of all Yemenis, thank you, Netherlands, that you are the first country to support psychosocial projects in Yemen.
Yes, we noted that. Thank you. Okay. But can I, because we know, of
you
course...
You said about numbers, how many numbers? We receive daily around 100 clients.
100 clients, because we know,
Or
well,
more,
I'm saying
more.
we know about situation in Yemen, but of course we don't really know about situation in Yemen, but we know of the horrible war, the humanitarian crisis that is going on. How can you offer help to maybe those most in need? I know you have the hotline, but how do you, because this center looks, so clean and well organized,
It's
but I think...
It's the only clean place in Yemen.
It's the only clean place in Yemen. Yeah, I've never seen such a clear space in my life.
I don't want you to take, this is Yemen. No. This is the center, but Yemen is different.
How does the crisis and the chaos in Yemen relates to your clinic? Like, it's so hard for me to picture it.
Yes. First of all, Yemeni people are very poor. This is one of the things that it's an obstacle for us. It's a big challenge. Because even though we offer the services for free, sometimes they don't have the transportation cost to come to us. So can you believe that? Even though we provide also psychotropic medication, and it's so expensive, and we provide it for free, but they cannot come and get it, and because they are very poor. 82% of the Yemeni population are under the poverty line, according to UN and the World Bank identification. And another thing, it's an obstacle for us, it's illiteracy.
Electricity, yeah, of course, electricity.
No.
Electricity, right?
Not electricity.
Illiterate.
Electricity. Electricity is also a problem, right? Yeah. But also
illiterate. Okay. Okay.
Illiteracy. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. 40% of our population are illiterate. Illiteracy among female, it's 77%. Yeah. Can you believe it? So they are not seeking psychological help because they don't know that these symptoms are related to psychological problems. So they go around for 3-4 years before they come to us seeking help from religious people, from witches, or I don't know, witches, and this kind of people who are not professional in this field. Charlatans.
Charlatans,
Yes, and it's sad to say that they come to our clinic, they have been beaten, they have been robbed tied with ropes, isolated in rooms, isolated from the whole society, and for 3-4 years. It's not just
because before they found you.
Before they found them. This is one of our.
I have to go to, or I really want to go to Mariana. We're going to talk more, of course, now. But otherwise, she's like, what am I doing here at this table? Now, Maria, good evening. Your work, your approach is different from the kind of, hardcore psychological aid. In what way do your methods complement or sometimes also conflict with this form of aid?
So I'm also a clinical psychologist in the traditional way that we all know here. But my story comes from the last couple of years where I have been intervening in humanitarian crisis. Like, I've never been in Yemen, but it's just a matter of chance. But I was in South Sudan, Libya, Syria, all this, designing and implementing mental health programs, trying to solve a little bit of this suffering and problems. And what I found out is, like, of course, there was a lot of stigma, and many times people were suffering because they didn't knew what it was about when it comes to mental health. Yeah. So people who, when they were really sad or depressed or with anxiety, they would tell me, okay, but I'm crazy. I must be crazy. yes, I'm living in this shelter. I lost all my family, but I cannot sleep. So I'm crazy. And this feeling of being crazy, this was something that was triggering their suffering, and it would increase the mental disease or the pathology. So, okay, I began during the last 14 years to see that these crises were increasing and also in time. And with all my work in the field, I was solving a little bit of the problem and reducing some suffering, but this was not enough. And meanwhile, I was working in Portugal, and I saw that as well. Portugal has one of the highest rates of depression and mental health suffering.
It's kind of what Minister Kaag said. Like it's on both.
It's the same.
Yeah.
We have one of the highest consumption of antidepressives in Europe, and we are so small and nice weather, and we have beach. So something was not good. And at a certain point, I decided, okay, maybe there is need for some tool that can at least cut the stigma and make everybody from the humanitarian context to the development context to look at what does it mean to be human, so we can cut with all this suffering, prevent these cycles of displaced people, of war, of angriness, of lack of tolerance, and meanwhile talk about mental health without saying the word mental health. So, okay,
and saying the word crazy.
Let's talk about emotions. So this is why I created the emotional toolkit for adults. And then I decided that I wanted to do this with experts from around the world, and I wanted to engage more people. And my experts were people that were observing this every day, and they were children between 5 and 10 years old. So I decided to interview children all over. Not all
and you
over.
say this like this is very clear. Why do you think children between 5 and 10 are the best observers?
Because they grow up in being refugees, but not being refugees. They see in the news all this war. They observe and they live in this constant climate change. They are the ones fighting for change, for climate change now. So these would be the experts about what's going on in the world, and they are the future generation. So I decided these were my experts. These were the people that I needed to interview and to ask, what does it mean for them to be human? And that's why I funded Be Human Association. And with their answers, we created an emotional toolkit for families.
Yeah.
And we did a documentary. This is what I...
You want to show a clip, huh?
Yeah, I want to show the trailer of this documentary, which is...
Yeah, please show us.
We live in a historical moment that is rapidly changing. Are Western societies in decline? Are we replacing the human touch with the iPad touch? Are emotions no longer perceived as an intelligent and useful response?
Enseñar a la gente. Clean the environment among the relatives, among mine.
To be the humanity we desire for our children means we care and are able to fulfill our universal responsibility, being the adult we needed when we were children.
You want to respond?
Well, yeah. If I can, because I like it a lot. You see the diversity of all the different faces, and I like very much what you say is that to do good mental health interventions, you don't always have to diagnose a person with a mental illness and tell them you have a sickness and we're going to treat it. So it's important to start the discussion and to help people finding words for emotions and experiences that they even can't find words for. So I didn't bring any tools or videos, but we do have them in the humanitarian aid world as well. And I really like it. So you're going to explain this. I love it already, what you said, because I think it's so important to empower people to find ways to deal with the suffering. And yes, I wish we had many more psychologists and psychiatrists as we in the world. but we won't soon have it. So we have to work through others and train refugees themselves briefly, in brief sessions, in brief trainings, and then help them helping others. And that's my mission, actually. Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Because it is a very different approach than your clinic in Sana, which is very, with it has all these treatments, but well, you don't play Jenga with your.
Yes, it's not only Yenga.
No, I know. No, but isn't it, because it sounds so logical, but isn't it also maybe too kind of fake to really help people, or not? Do I misunderstand the concept?
I think there are different layers, and of course, when we talk about mental health, there are specific situations where you need to intervene. And if I have someone with schizophrenia, for instance, I have to use my specific and therapeutic and medical approach. Yeah. So there is space for this, of course. Yeah. But mental health is not only that. And I think when it comes to stigma, it's not only about the political decisions or the political agenda that doesn't include mental health. So that's why I don't go to consultations. Yeah. Because what I feel and what I also see in my country, sometimes the services are there, but people don't talk about this and they don't even go. Yeah. So there is a big gap. Sometimes the service is available, but then they don't go. So the stigma in between is something
you also experience that, right? The stigma.
Yes. But in my country, it's not the big challenge as I always hear in other countries. Even when I was studying in the United States, I was thinking about what about Yemen? When I go back, people will not come to seek help, and like this, it's the opposite, completely the opposite. I found a long list of people that they are waiting for a therapist. So the helpline is one of the things that help us to reduce the feeling of stigma, because no one know what's your name.
You can call anonymous,
and anything, and you talk about anything that you want, and this has helped a lot. Yeah. And then we found out that people who benefited from the helpline, they don't feel shame to tell others about their problems and their stories, and they encourage them to call to get this service, because through our database we have a question that we ask people, how do you know about the service? So 50% of people who call the helpline, they know from another person who benefited from this.
So then Yemen is kind of an how you say that, uitzondering, an exception. But how did you use when you encountered these stigmas? If you already have examples of how you used this new technique and got people involved that wouldn't get involved in the first place?
I can answer, but without answering, I can give an example. In Portugal, for instance, patients, they get really angry when they say, okay, what's my diagnosis? And I say, why aren't you suffering? So what do you feel about this? How do you feel about being in this state? And when they begin to talk about their emotions, this is the moment where they crack and they forget about diagnosis, and they begin to understand the meaning of feeling sad, the meaning to rebuild, okay, this is what makes me feel happy or make me feel calm and quiet. So they begin to have emotionary. And this is the moment where they also learn how to regulate. So I thought that maybe this could be the turning point to reduce stigma. It's okay, if you increase your emotionary, you will begin to build your own positive account of emotions. So it will be easy to survive when it comes a crisis. I'm not saying that we will fight humanitarian crisis. This is not it, but it was a way.
But is it also then a new language to kind of deal with your problems, to give it different words, and thereby it's easier to deal with it?
It will be easy, because what I see when people feel really in crisis, they don't know what they feel and they say, I must be crazy. And just by explaining, no. Sometimes when people experience this kind of situation, you may feel this, and this, usually people react like this. People, they relax and they begin to create space to be resilient again. So this was my point.
Yeah. Peter, you wanted to react?
Yeah, because I think we need to I like what you said about the different layers, because that is a good way of saying it. Not everything works for everyone.
Yes.
And I've seen, for example, in northern Uganda, where you have lots of South Sudanese refugees, that it can be extremely effective to bring, for example, women who have what I would say a depression, but they may not call it like that. They may call it overthinking or having a deep heart, whatever. And bringing them together and then having a trained other refugee or a social worker to go through different steps, and they start to rebuild trust, start to share experiences, start to recognize what you experience is also what I experienced. Your pain is similar to my pain. Those things help. Now, yes, if you have a deep depression, that will not be enough. So you may need more. And if you have, what you said, a psychosis, you may need medication or even hospitalization. So we need to build a system, like we do in the Netherlands as well. We have a system for different kinds of care, except that the stones that we use to build a system are different. Because in northern Uganda, I don't have so much. So I do it in a more simple way, so to say, with the tools that I have. Or the tools, I mean the resources that I have.
Which are mostly the people.
Those are the
themselves.
people, exactly. Yeah.
I still want to ask some really medical stuff, because it just, I find it
I'm
interesting, because there are three doctors here. No, so it's a question to all of you.
They are
But
psychiatrists
because,
and psychotherapists.
but I see in Sana you prescribe medication. You also said like sometimes you have to prescribe medication. But then I thought, okay, but in a situation of conflict in a refugee camp, things are changing so fast. Maybe people leave. How do you do that? Because prescriptive medication has to be used very carefully. How do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, first of all, if a person is, for example, having a psychosis and a person needs medication, so I don't prescribe, but we have partners in UNHCR who prescribe that. The way to ensure that people take it in the right way is, one thing is to prescribe medication that is cheap and available everywhere.
Yeah.
We call that essential medication from the World Health Organization. So if I prescribe it in northern Uganda and the people have to flee again in another place, you will find the same medication, or at least you have the biggest chance that you find that. And for my field in psychiatry, we have around maybe 200 different medicaments. That essential drug list has only 10. Yeah. Not ideal, but that gives a certain guarantee that you can find it everywhere, and it's damn cheap, I can tell you. So that's one. The other thing is, of course, to explain very well, to have the buy-in of the patient so that they understand
what they start with.
Yes, and so working with families, working with the persons themselves. And usually a refugee camp is not so unstable. I mean, the average duration of being in a refugee camp is 17 years, so it's long. But if you are in situations like we had 5 years ago, when you had this big migration crisis through Greece, through the Balkans, then you give medication and you give a little card to with the prescription so that people keep it, and if they go elsewhere, that they can get it.
That's great.
That's interesting.
Bring some to Yemen.
We should talk.
So we make a little deal here now. Okay, my last very medical question is here in the Netherlands, people are very, very enthusiastic about EMDR, the way to overcome trauma in a very, it's the eye rapid movement,
sensitization, regulation. Yeah.
And what I know is that it's sometimes you only need a few sessions and you've kind of dealt with the trauma. So I thought, is this the ideal method to use in this?
No, there is no ideal method.
But is it an important new method in these situations of crisis, or not at all?
I think it's a very useful method. I personally use it a lot in Portugal. Funny that I don't use it when I'm in the field.
Why?
Because sometimes I don't stay long enough to see and to support the patient. And in Portugal, I'm there and I can see the impact that the tool has on the patient, and I can do a follow-up and I can support, because it's a very powerful tool. And from my experience, I need to use it carefully. I see it's very efficient, but I need to be part of the process of the recovery of my patients. And when I'm with beneficiaries, sometimes it's 6 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks in emergencies. So it's not. Yeah, sometimes it's tricky. I rather, but maybe it's a personal.
Is that maybe also because when we also talk about the relationship between the international aid worker and the local aid worker? Well, first, you've already told about how you work. Yeah, you try to train the people that are there. But isn't the problem that you're always too short of a period there to really build something sustainable?
But I don't now. In Afghanistan, I lived for 3 years in Jalalabad. In Burundi, I lived 3 years in Bujumbura. But that's different. The way you work is with shorter missions. Now I also go briefly. So it really is about building capacity of people who are there. It's all about normalizing a country in conflict and in war. The government cannot do what it should do. Healthcare and education. The communities cannot do what they should do, provide support to each other. The families cannot do what they should do, protect their children. That's why the outside world comes in, as long as it's needed. If you have Bilqis, you help Bilqis doing her work. You don't ask me to come.
No. Yes. You agree on that, right? Yeah.
He's the one who said that.
Yes.
Maybe I can just add a little comment on this.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we talk about emergency, if I arrive and I just explain in the community, for instance, in Libya, it was a group of women. Many women, if they are exposed to bombing and shelling, maybe you will have this and this and these symptoms. Next week I will be here. If in case you have, because probably it's not your case, but in case you have, you can come. The week after they come, and instead of coming alone, they bring all their community. And just by having this information, you will reduce the chances of developing trauma in the future. So most of the times when you talk about mental health interventions in this serious moment, even if it's short, just giving the information will prevent the severe cases to get sick or to develop pathology. So it's very efficient. It's again talking about the layers.
You were the editor-in-chief of this magazine, the Intervention Journal, and I read that it was open access.
Yes.
Did that work? Like, did social workers or medical workers from all these countries find it? And
well, still not everybody knows it, but the journal was established 17 years ago by in Sri Lanka after the civil war, because the local psychosocial workers actually said, we want to learn, we want to read, but if we a psychological journal, we can't read it because it's expensive. We don't have the money for it, but also because the language is not the language that we use. So intervention tries to bridge the world of research, policymakers, and practitioners in a very practical way. No, not enough people know it. So Intervention Journal, go Google it.
No, but I thought it was interesting that this open source information, because sometimes I can understand that you always have this huge knowledge gap, which also...
Well, but it's not just people like me telling people in a low-income country what to do. The journal is filled, at least for half, by people from low-income countries describing what they do. So you have an aid worker from Bangladesh describing what they do in the Rohingya crisis. And then someone from South Sudan says, that is interesting, we can perhaps do that too.
But I find very interesting, I'm talking with you and you all work for years, doing this work. And then I was talking with the minister and she was like, for years nothing has been done and we really have to do something now. And I thought like, how does, how does it relate to the work
I think again, it's different layers, no? I'm using this a lot, but...
For what he was telling us, we developed a manual, easy manual, that people can, we do different kind of manuals. We do for specialists, that steps they can follow, whether this one come a new team, they can read this and follow up. And we do a small, it's like a brochure, but a small manual for public people, that you know this is the symptoms, where to get help, how to get help. Even we do like mapping for all the organization and services around, so they can read this and know where to go, for example. So
this is about
sharing
information. But
I think there is a lot of experience. There is a lot of tools that we can use, manuals and training approaches. What the problem is that there is no predictable response. If now there is a disaster somewhere, then we do not have a very clear set of things of what needs to be done. We have maybe hundreds of different tools. Some of them work well for this, some of them work better for that.
And do you think you need a big one?
Yes.
Yeah?
No, well, we need a toolbox where we can, with the essential interventions, we have that for reproductive health. For mother and child health. If there is a disaster, we can just calculate. You have 100,000 people, then we need this and this and these resources. For mental health, we don't have that yet. And that is the big thing that Sigrid Kaag is now actually developing. That's one. And the second thing is, yes, we have a lot of experience, but we never had a very high policy maker who put it on the agenda. And Sigrid Kaag is a character, because she calls my boss, the High Commissioner, and she says, what are you doing about mental health? And then he's saying, oh, what do we do about mental health? So we need advocates who can change the whole discourse of the humanitarian world, and to make sure that the tools that we have are collected and are used.
Yeah. Do you both agree on that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
So I think it was very for me a happy moment when I saw yesterday the final decision of, okay, we will create this package, and we are all committed with this WHO mental health package, which is really.
And when you say there's like one universal package, then does that also mean that cultural
locally?
So how so that always stays a struggle to have a universal package, but then apply it on a local situation, of course.
But I think for me, what I felt is, okay, this is the kick out start. This is the turning point and the moment where there will be budget, and certain activities will be there and will be evaluated, and then they needed the adjustments. But already we have many guidelines that we do it like this. But to have it in the first stage, it's amazing.
There is a tool that we now use increasingly, which is called Problem Management Plus, which is a very simple psychotherapy, just 6 sessions. You can train it in 8 days to people, and that is in English, it's well researched, it works, it doesn't solve everything, but it helps. And that's now been translated in at least 10 languages. So, and if you train, you do an interactive training. It's not top-down, it's participatory.
My last question to you all, because our last speaker will give a short presentation, but a very insightful presentation about how, as an aid worker yourself, deal with all the stress and trauma you encounter in your work. Can you maybe, all the 3 of us, tell us short how you try to deal with it? Maybe Maria, start with you on it.
So I usually say I didn't begin here. So I already have like 14 years of field experience. And of course I was building up this resilience. And also I began to learn and understand myself and what could be my resources and what I needed to work. So many times I have my rituals before going to the field and when I come from the field, and also while in the field. So of course the first missions were I was a bit lost. I didn't know what could work with me or not. But then with experience, nowadays it's...
But do you like to share a ritual with us?
I can share. I'm a yogi addicted, so
I do yoga.
But I think this is a privilege because I have many colleagues that really hate yoga or exercise. So sometimes I discovered yoga in one of my missions in India, and this was very useful for me, and then I began to use it. I also love to cycle, so yeah. It's
yoga and cycle.
Yeah.
Peter.
Well, for me personally, it helps to sport, even though I don't do it enough. And I had a burnout last year, so mindfulness helped me. So I think we will hear more about it from you. So there are different ways, but I want to say that the burnout that I had was not just because of one traumatic event. It's because of accumulative stress that we face. And it's also important that you have an organizational culture where you can share your experience and where that is accepted.
So how do you do that, Bilqis, as the head of an organization and then your own personal...
For myself, I do yoga too. So I do just few exercises of yoga. But what helped me more that when I go around the center and see people that they appreciate the service, I forget everything that I did for I don't feel exhausted. I am exhausted. I have headache. When I go around and ask them, what do you think of the service? How is it going? I go to the night care and they are very happy and the relatives are very happy. I feel that everything is fine and feel that this is my reward for my work. But for me, it's a big burden that I have to deal with the stress of the big team. My big team are they are exposed into too much stress.
Yeah, you're responsible for their stress too.
Yes, they are working a lot. They are seeing many people at one day. They are calling many phone calls, and they are living the same things. They are not observer. They are living the same difficulties, the same circumstances. They are hearing the bombs and things like others suffering, and they are supposed to provide help.
Yeah.
So it's very hard. Sometimes we are trying to do even for the team, like group therapy, to talk about maybe a case, to from time to time to do like 1 day off, to go outside somewhere and eat together. Our male, they play soccer and things every Thursday. So we are trying, but they are stressed out because they have been living for almost 5 years and they are helping people for 5 years, and it's a big number. And when you help, I used to work in the United States in counseling center. It's easy to help someone there because all the service around is helping. If it's a suicidal event case, I will just make one call. The client will go from my clinic to the hospital. The ambulance will come and take this case because I said she will commit suicide. But in Yemen, sometimes you don't know where to start with the patient because everything is closed. They don't have money. They don't have family support. Sometimes we have to deal with mothers. She lost 4 kids. Can you believe it?
No.
4 kids. It's very hard. And they are like, what can you do with this? She's in this denial stage. And then I remember one of the cases, she had 2 kids. One is 21 and the other one is 16. The 21 son go to the front line for war as a soldier and he died. She can handle it. After 1 month, the 16 years old died also. She collapsed. I saw this case. And I don't know how to explain it. But she's like denial that he did. She prepared the food every day for him. She talked to him. She refused to make a funeral for him. And they brought her to us because they started to put burn in here and here. Maybe she will heal. And we tried to do our best, but she survived. She's good now. But after
so you managed.
Long, and many people they lost 4, 5. Sometimes they lost a husband and a son and an uncle, and it's many. Have you heard about the big hall that they make a funeral in it?
Yeah.
There was 1,500 people in this hall. And there's a bomb strike bombs to bomb the hall. 2 people were killed. 5 people were injured. From a family, one family, they are my relatives. 37 people were killed just from one family. and 42 was injured. Can you believe it?
I wanted to talk about how you deal with it, but you have to deal with this all the time.
And these people, they come to us after. I hope they all come to us. Just few people come to us. The other people, they are suffering and continue to suffer, and they don't know that there is a help.
I can only say that I think it's very inspiring and amazing, the work that you do, but also that you do. So I really want to thank you a lot to share this with us. And then we go to our last...